So I've got this flat bar left over from a previous project, and I want to make some little tabs, is that like fixing tabs that I'm going to weld onto my frame. I'm making it out of some flat bar, which is about 30 or 40 millimeters wide, about 3 millimeters thick, that are going to give me points that I can then attach my timber verticals. So I'm going to have 3 timber verticals and then a whole bunch, like 17 horizontal timber slats that connect between those verticals. I'm doing that so that it's easier to fix on all of the slats, because I'll just be fixing timber to timber, which is really quick and easy, whereas I only have to fix these 3 per gate timber verticals. I'm going to do 1 on each side and 1 in the middle. So I've got to create some little tabs, middle tabs. There's probably a correct name for this kind of thing. I'm going to call them middle tabs, middle fixing tabs. I could just cut them straight, but I'm going to be fancy because that's what I do. And I'm going to put a little angle on them so that actually my ones that go up the top and bottom of the gate are actually going to go right into like the intersection of the brace and the frame, which will actually also make them work as what's called a gusset. So they'll actually provide a little bit of strength to the gate, just because it's easy enough. Because what I've worked out is if I'm cutting at an angle that way, it just creates the same angle on the next piece for the next one. I'm going to make them like a trapezoid shape. Not a parallelogram, but a trapezoid. So that's like that. So it's going to have 2 flat surfaces from the bar and then 2 angles like that. And they're going to, I just think that'll look quite nice having the tabs those shapes anyway. I'm going to do 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom, 1 in the middle, 1 at the top, 1 on the bottom, 1 in the middle. Each one of them will have 2 holes in it for fixing to the timber. So you just fix your screws straight through the holes in the middle and into the timber. And then in the middle at the cross, I'm going to have to make different ones. That angle is different by taking the bar, cutting at that angle, and then measuring the distance of my cut, the length of my cut, making the same distance along the bar and cutting. And then I'll have this like nice little diamond shape. I'm just trying to make it all look nice from the back rather than just do some square little tabs and put them in there and they'll look kind of a little shonky. And I'll do 1 of those on top and bottom. So I'm going to need 4 of those, and I need whatever that is, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 of the other ones. So I'm going to make those. And what I worked out is before cutting them, so I'll mark them all out on a long piece of bar, all of these shapes that I'm going to make, all of these little gussets, all of these little tabs, and then I'll drill them first, because that's way easier to clamp a big long bar down to the drill press and drill all those holes first and then cut them out. Anyway, please like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for coming along on my journey, and let's get some more of this work done on the gate. Let's get it done, eh?
This worked out really well. Drilling all the holes in these tabs before cutting them up? Genius. Holding onto the small parts at the drill press would have been dangerous, or at least challenging. I used a small drill bit to start, and then a 4mm was big enough for the screw to fit through. I also used a countersink bit so that my screw will sit nice and flush with the steel. Using a drill press is ideal for drilling steel. I used the depth stop to make nice even countersinks. Using the big Choppy Choppy is way faster, so I set the angle on that sucker and away I go. I need to flip the bar over to get each second cut, so I make some marks on the saw's table to line up the bar for those cuts. Yeah, you saw me stuff up there and make a small cut in the wrong place. But the beauty of working with steel is I can whack some weld in there later and you'll never know. Well, you will, but shh, don't tell anyone, eh? Okay, so those fancy diamonds I talked about making in the intro, well, I realized I probably should have drawn them on my computer first. I used an angle I already had for making the braces, but it was half the angle it actually needed to be after I cut them out. Whoops. After a bit of brainstorming with my wife Lucy, a solution was found, to just chop the tips off the diamonds to create the correct angle. I also realized that in the corners of my gates, my tabs there were also the wrong angle, but a simple solution was found to cut them in half and put half on either side of the cross brace. A little bit more mucking around, but at least I don't need to remake them. It'll become clearer later in the video how they worked out. Working smarter and not harder. Here I clamped all of the tabs in a stack and rounded over the points on them all at once. Here's a shot of all the fixing tabs ready for welding onto the frames. The magnets are really awesome for little tasks like this. I did learn a bit of a lesson here when fixing on the tabs. I got carried away trying to just get it done. I didn't follow my own advice that I gave in my previous video. To avoid warping of your piece, you don't want to lay a whole bunch of weld into one area. You want to weld a little, move around, weld elsewhere, and then come back and do a little more. I didn't do that and ended up creating a bit of warp in my frames, enough to annoy me after having made such square frames, to mess it up at this point when they are almost finished. Don't worry, I managed to get the best part of it out, but you'll have to watch the next video to see how I do that. Here you can see by cutting the tabs in half they worked out to fit into the corners, and how the diamonds worked out in the middle after my little modification. As you can see, I'm about as amateur at this YouTube thing as I am at my metalwork. Sanding and grinding and welding and planning and digging and nailing and whistling and prepping and singing and marking and cutting and pointing and routing and forever caulking. With Kiwi Dazz getting it done, eh? Alright, it's starting to look like some nice shiny gate frames ready for the powder coater. For my second major project on the MIG welder, I couldn't be more chuffed with myself how these have come out. I don't really know how necessary this is, but I decided to weld some little scraps of steel onto the bottom of my post where they will be in the concrete to ensure it is keyed in. Okay, maybe I'm getting a bit carried away here, welding a Kiwi bird Kiwi Dazz logo with safety glasses and earmuffs on the bottom of my post. Shows how much I'm enjoying this MIG welder and becoming a YouTuber. I bought a step drill bit. This is much quicker for drilling your holes in the steel as it saves changing your drill bit as you work up in size. I made some fixing tabs for the post that is going up against my boundary fence so that I can attach it to the fence. If you enjoyed watching the show, I reckon you should subscribe, eh cuz? So yeah, you always want to keep your building inspectors in a good mood, so I'm taking mine for a walk. There's Inspector 1, boy, and Inspector 2, Puffy.